Okay, so here we're going to do our graphing inequalities quiz review. So hopefully by now you have a decent grasp of what's going on, but if not, take your time to study this video. Most of these should be pretty simple because they are in slope-intercept form. You just have to remember, let's cover the basics real quick. So if you have an inequality that's less than or greater than, but without the line underneath it, then this would be a dashed line. You'll see that when we graph. Versus if you have one with a line underneath it, like this one or this one, that indicates a solid line. So that's very important. We understand that. The less than stuff will be the stuff you shade below, and the greater than stuff will be the stuff you shade above. And the other thing that you need to keep in mind is if you divide by a negative, your sign flips. So keep that in mind as well. All right. So here in number 1, we have mx plus b again. So this is very good. We like to see it laid out like this. It makes it easy to graph. So make sure you understand how we graph this. This -1 is our y-intercept value. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with -1 on the y-axis. So that's right there. And then the 2 represents our slope. Now, if you remember, it's a whole number. So think of this as a fraction, like 2/1. Anytime you have to do that, anytime you have to make a whole number look like a fraction by putting it over 1, that over 1 means right 1, okay? But the 2, of course, means up to. So for our slope, we're going to count from this spot. Let me zoom in a little bit. Up to, and then right 1, which puts us right here. Okay, and we do that again, going up to and right 1. That puts us here. And again, we can go up 2 and right 1, and we can fill out this line. I'm going to go backwards. Going backwards, we'll go the opposite direction. So down 2 and left 1, and we have our line. Now remember, what's important here is not only what type of line we fill this in with, but the shading direction as well. So if we look back at our inequality sign, this is less than or equal to. So because it's got the line underneath it, that means it's going to be a solid line. So we'll go ahead and trace out a solid line. And since it's less than, remember, the inequality opens up towards the side that's bigger. So this side is bigger, meaning that y is less than or smaller than that side. So it's less than, meaning that we would shade below the line. So to shade below the line, we would shade in, let me give a highlighter, here we go. Shade in this part of the line below it. So you'd shade all of this area in. All right. And there's our graph. Now let's look at number 2. So number 2 is very similar, of course. It's also, again, an mx plus b form. So we have this as our y-intercept, +5. So we're going to start at +5. And then our slope, -3. Remember, that's a whole number, so let's write it as a fraction. Let's put over 1, which, again, remind you, that means right 1. The 1 does, at least. The 1 means right 1. The top number, though, of course, -3 means down 3. It's negative, so negatives is indicating us down. So from our y-intercept, we'll count down 3. 1, 2, 3. And then, of course, right 1, which puts us right here. And we'll do that again. Doing down 3, right 1. We can fill out more of these points and the rest of this, trace out the rest of this line. And we'll go backwards as well. Go up 3 and left 1. So we've got our line traced out. Now, keep in mind our symbol. We have a no line underneath it. So a no line means a dashed line. So we're going to draw a dashed line here. There we go. And this is greater than. It's opening up towards the y. So y is bigger, y is greater. So we shade above our line. So above our line is going to be this part of the line, right above it. And we'll shade in that entire side. There we go. Let's look at number 3. So number 3, again, same setup, same start. This -2 is our y-intercept. So we're going to start at -2 on the y-axis. And then the 1/4 is our slope. Now it's already a fraction, which is good. It tells us exactly how far up and over and left or right to go. So the 1 is indicating up 1, and the 4 is indicating right 4. So we would count up 1 and then right 1, 2, 3, 4, puts us right here. And of course, do it again, up 1, right 4, and go backwards as well, down 1 and left 4 to fill in the rest of this line. Trace it out. So there's our slope, there's our line. Remember, y-intercept is at -2, and our slope was going up 1 and over 4, because as indicated by our fraction here. So now it does not have a line under it, so we will draw a dashed line again. And then it's less than, because it's opening up to this side, so this side is bigger, so y is less than that side. So we shade below, less than meaning below. So that's going to be all of this part. All right, keep it going here. Number 4, same setup, right? The +1 is our y-intercept. So we're going to start at +1 on the y-axis, and then we have a slope -3/4. Now, associate that negative to the top, not the bottom. So think of this as -3 over a +4. Remember, this indicates rise over run, so this is telling us down 3, and then right 4 again. So down 3, 1, 2, 3, and right 1, 2, 3, 4. That puts us here. Do it again, down 3, right 4, puts us here. And of course, you can go backwards, up 3, left 4, puts us there. Up 3, left 4, puts us there. All right, so just remember, y-intercept is at +1. Our slope was -3 over 4. Remember, it's called rise over run for a reason. Rise is to remind you of the up and downness. Rise is going up or down, like elevators go up or down. A negative, of course, though, tells us down, as we did. And then run tells us laterally, because you don't run vertically. You run horizontally. You run on the ground. You run left or right. So that's numbers. The run indicates us our left and right. And since it's positive, we go to the right. So that's, remember how we came up with down 3 and right 4. To count down 1, 2, 3, right 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now we do have a line underneath our inequality symbol. It is greater than or equal to. So with that line underneath it, that means a solid line. And then, of course, y is greater. It's opening up towards the y, so the y is the bigger side. So y is greater, so we shade above. There we go. All right, now, number 5 and 6. These are easy. Don't let them fool you, okay? You just have to remember how this works, okay? And remember this for the quiz. So y less than or equal to 3. So on the y-axis, go find 3. 3 is right here on the y-axis. Remember, that's y less than or equal to 3. So on the y-axis, we go find 3. Now, there's no slope to this line, so it's just straight horizontal line through 3. Now, because it's got the line underneath it here, the symbol does, right? It's a solid line. So a solid horizontal line right there through y, okay? So that's what that looks like. Don't overthink it, okay? It's simple. It's just at 3 on the y-axis. At 3 on the y-axis, we draw our line straight through it. Now it is, remember, a horizontal line, right? One that lies flat. This was, again, a solid line because of the line being underneath our symbol here. Now y is less than, right? 3, it's opening up towards the 3, so the 3 is bigger, meaning that y is smaller. So y is less than 3 means we're shading below this line. All right. Now number 6, okay? Now keep in mind the difference here. This is x, not y. X is greater than -5. So on the x-axis, this is the only time we ever start on the x-axis. The x-axis, we go to -5, and we start there, okay? Now it's very similar, though. This line doesn't have a slope, but because it's going through the x-axis, this line is a vertical line, one that goes straight up and down. So remember, y is horizontal, okay? Horizontal or flat, right? X is vertical, okay? Like a cliff side, all right? So our vertical line, it's going to be a dashed line because you can see our inequality symbol here does not have a line under it. So it'll be a dashed line that goes vertically through -5 on the x-axis. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. And now x is bigger. It's opening up towards x, so we have to go x is bigger. Now in this case, remember, if you think about the x-axis, the numbers to the right are bigger numbers because you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, on that axis, right? Versus numbers on the left, which are smaller numbers, which would be numbers like -6, -7, -8, and so on. So if we want the bigger side, because x is bigger than -5, then we want to shade the side that's got the bigger numbers. So the side with the bigger numbers is going to be this one. So this one's definitely kind of a little bit different than the others because it doesn't have an up or down, because it's straight up, and because it is a straight vertical line, there's only a left or right side. So left is smaller, right is bigger. So since x is bigger, we shaded to the right because right is bigger, left is smaller. All right. So they're easy problems. They are, but they can be a little confusing, and it's very easy to get them backwards. But if you just study it enough, you'll know. You'll know where to graph it. All right. Now 7's the one problem that you have to do quite a little bit of work on. So we have 2x minus 3y is greater than 6. So the work here we have to do is we have to rearrange it into slope-intercept form. So there's only 2 steps we have to do to accomplish this. So pay attention here. So the first thing we're going to do is move the x term. So since it's a positive 2x, we'll subtract 2x on both sides. So that leaves us -3y, keeps our sign greater than. And then on this side, remember that you cannot combine the 6 and the -2x. They don't combine together, so keep them separate. I like to write the x term before the other number. So -2x, since it is a minus, and then plus 6 because it is a positive 6, right? Positive 6 indicating that it's still positive down here, so plus 6. All right, that's step 1. Step 2, and again, notice all we really did, if you pay close attention, right? We had the 2x term, we had the 3y term, and we had the 6 term. And after that first step, we still have those same exact terms. We still have the 2x term, we still have the 3y term, and we still have the 6 term, right? It's just the 6, as you can see, stayed on the right side. The 3y stayed on the left side. But what we did, of course, was we moved the x term to the other side. So the 2x was on the left, but now it's on the right. And keep in mind, the one thing that changed about it is the fact that it's a -2 now instead of a +2. That's what happens when you move it like that. But everything else stayed the same. The -3y was still a negative because we did not move it. And the 6 was still positive because we did not move it. All right, so now step 2 is to divide by -3. So divide by -3 in order to cancel that out. Divide by -3, divide by -3. So that leaves you y. Now, because you're dividing by a negative, remember we mentioned in the beginning, you have to flip the sign around. So dividing by a negative number means flip the sign around. Now what we have is we have this fraction, -2 divided by -3. Now don't freak out, 3 doesn't go into 2. That's fine. You can leave this as a fraction. However, what you do want to pay attention to is the fact that they're both negative numbers. -2 divided by -3. When it's a double negative like that, the negatives cancel out, so it becomes a positive fraction. Okay, and that works for division. A negative divided by another negative leads you to a positive result. So our fraction 2/3 can be a positive 2/3. However, the 6 divided by -3 is not as lucky because they're not both negative, because it's a positive 6 divided by a -3. But 3 does go into 6. It goes into it twice, but it's a negative twice, so -2. So we have everything we need to graph it now. We have our y-intercept is at -2, so we'll go on the y-axis. We'll go down to -2. And our slope is 2/3. Remember, rise over run. So rising 2 means up 2. Running 3 means right 3. So 2 up, 3 right. That puts us right here, and here, and here. And we can go backwards as well. All right, so remember our line in this case is going to be a dashed line because our inequality symbol here does not have the line underneath it. So it's a dashed line. And then it's y is less than. It's opening up towards the side that's got 2x, 2/3 x minus 2. So the y is smaller than that side. So y is smaller means we shade below the line. So we're going to shade below the line. That's going to be all of this area. And so that is our graph. And now the last one, y equals x. It looks simple, and it is simple, but don't let it fool you. This is telling us that it's y is greater than or equal to x plus 0, essentially. So what this is saying is that there is no y-intercept, or there is a y-intercept, but the y-intercept is at 0. Okay, so if there is no number being added or subtracted here, it just means that that number is 0, so the y-intercept is at 0. So we're starting at 0, and then our slope, remember, it's still 1x, so our slope is still 1. Now make this look like a fraction by putting it over 1. Remember, that means to the right 1. And since it's a positive 1 on the top, I know I'm saying 1 a lot, and that's confusing. That positive 1 means up 1. So our slope, simply 1 over 1, means up, rise over run. So up 1 and right 1. So that's going to put us here, have our line look like this. And then backwards as well. Kind of looks like a dashed line right now because of all the dots. However, it is going to be a solid line because our inequality symbol has the line underneath it. So when we trace our line through it, it should be a solid line. Okay, with no gaps. And now, remember, this is saying y is greater than x. So y is opening up to be the bigger side, so we're shading above the line, which is going to be here. All right, you study this enough, you'll be ready for the test, the quiz, I should say, in no time. It should be a pretty simple quiz. As long as you know your slope and y-intercept, that's essentially what most of this test is. Remember the x and y vertical horizontal lines, because that's a good quarter of the test. And then those last two problems can be a little bit tricky, but no need to worry. If you look at the overall grand scheme of this, though, there's not a lot of work to do, right? The only work that we did was down here in number 7. Everything else was just a matter of reading the equation and knowing what type of line to do. Dashed line, solid line, shading above or shading below, which is why we talked about those things again at the beginning. So study this, memorize it. Make sure you study your slope and y-intercept stuff. Make sure you know how to read an equation like this and know where to start and what the slope is. And then, of course, study the horizontal versus vertical lines, and you should be all right. So good luck with everything, and we'll see you guys next time.